Alright, we're ready for another build here. We got a Optima Mid, Kyosho Optima Mid. This is a re-release, so pretty excited about building this one. This is not my car. I'm going to build this for a friend of mine, so I'm pretty excited about it. A little nervous about it too, honestly, because these are expensive kits and I want to do a good job for them. So, been wanting to do it for a while, just haven't had time to do it, so I finally decided let's just go ahead and get started on it. So, these are really nice kits, these Optima Mids. These are a high-end four-wheel drive car that Kyosho made. You know, when I was a kid, I could never afford one of these things. Still can't afford one of these things, but it's nice that Kyosho puts these out. It's got a lot of upgraded parts on it. The differentials is upgraded. It has a lot of these can run lipos and brushless motors, and which is what I'm going to be putting in it. So, pretty excited about it. Let's go ahead and get started on the build. Okay, before we start putting it together, I want to just go over the box and stuff. We've got the manual. We've got the body here. Got our tires and some plastic parts in here. At the bottom we got a nice set of decals. Over here on the left we've got our shocks, some axles, and our bearings. And then all the parts are in this box here. Got the bottom chassis there. Some shock parts. So all the parts are in there, tires and some of the plastic parts are in that one. I'm guessing the gearbox housing and all that are in there. I got some tires. This one does come with a plastic wing as opposed to the Lexan wing, which what the original one came with, which is, you know, that's kind of cool. Those will be a little bit tougher and something else you don't have to paint and cut out. So that's what's in there. Let's go ahead and get started. So one of the things that I want to do before we build this is I want to try to preserve this packaging here. I want to try to get these pieces out without destroying the plastic. So I'm going to go ahead and try my best to cut these out of here, and just to preserve this the best that I can. So I got that cut out. So at least I preserved that somewhat. So let's go ahead and start building it. Okay, so I got all my parts for the differential out here, and I'm going to go ahead and get that assembled. I'm not going to use, this is calling for grease. I'm going to go ahead and use some silicone oil for the differentials, since these are still differentials. So I'm going to go ahead and get these put back together, and we'll move on to step 2. Okay, so I got oil in there enough to where it's filling almost half that up. I'll put just a little bit more in there. And I'm going to go ahead and screw the other half of this together, and that'll be one done, and then we'll go ahead and we'll do the other one. Okay, so I got steps 1 and 2 done. That's basically assembling the front and the rear differentials. The front differential I did have a problem with. The part of the housing seemed like the screw holes weren't properly formed, and they wanted to go in there crooked, and I could not get it to seal properly, so I kept having oil leak out of one of the screw holes. That one right there, it seems to be, or that one there seems to be a little deeper for some reason than the other ones, and it wouldn't. And oil just kept leaking out of there real slowly, and I didn't want it to make a mess inside the housing, so I drained that all out of there and just put grease in there. So I got those done. I wish that could have had oil in it, but maybe at a later date it could be that part could be replaced and made to actually hold oil. But for now I'm going to move on to step 3, which is to assemble the main gear. So the first part of step 3 is to glue this gear together, and that will slide on the gear shaft there. So we'll go ahead and get that assembled. So we've got the main gear put together. We'll go ahead and move on to step 4. Alright, I got step 4 done, which is the gearbox, getting both sides of the gearbox ready to go. So we're going to move on to step 5. Alright, we got the transmission put together. The next step is to put the slipper clutch on it, so we'll go ahead and get that done. Alright, I got the slipper clutch mounted on there. I'm going to move on to step number 8, which is to go ahead and get the shock tower mounted on there. Alright, I've got the shock mount put together, the screws through there. Instructions call for a little bit of super glue on the edge of the tower, on the shock towers where the shocks are at, probably just to protect it. So I'm going to go ahead and just dab a little bit on that. I've never seen that before, but shouldn't be a big deal. I got the super glue applied. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but got super glue on that top edge, so we'll set this shock tower off to the side and let that cure. We'll move on to step number 9. Alright, next step is number 9. We're going to go ahead and get the front differential assembled. We'll get the belt from the rear transmission put in there, and then we'll get the front shock tower mounted on there. Shock tower screws through there, and just like the other one, this calls for super glue to be spread around there, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Again, I think this is just to protect this from fraying. Slip it off to dry. We got step number 9 done. We're going to go ahead and attach that to the chassis. Alright, I got the front and rear differentials mounted to the chassis, so it's time to move on to step number 11, which is to attach the belt cover to the chassis. Step 13 is just attaching 3 screws to the upper deck mount. Move it on to step 14, which is assembling the front hubs. Alright, we got the hubs put together. Time to move on to the A-arms and the front suspension, step number 15. Tie rods are built. We're going to go on to step 17, which is the front suspension. Alright, we got step 17 done, which is the front suspension. We're going to move on to step 18, which is the rear suspension. We're done with step 18 with the rear hubs. We're going to go ahead and move on to step 19, which is the rear suspension. Alright, step 19 is done. Finally, it was a struggle. It was real hard to film. These C-clips were a bear, and I never struggled with C-clips, but these were a pain in the butt. Everything just seemed so tight. But got her put together and ready to move on to step 20.